pleasure of having John Platta with us today. And John is a woodworker, and he has specialized lately during his retirement in laser work and etching, making bowls, and he's going to enlighten us about all that. And I met him at the McGonigal Library, and going to tell us a little bit about the programs they have there that all of you can participate in. And one little thing just to tell you about him, he is a competing equestrian. He, in competition, rides a Frisian stallion, black stallion named Blackjack, and his wife rides an Arabian named, was it?
Ascari.
Ascari, which is warrior. So, you know, a little bit more about him. John?
Thank you. My wife says I horse around too much, but that's part of the reason I do the riding. First of all, I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to be here and talk with you tonight and kind of introduce you to things that I've been doing for the past couple of years at the McGonigal Library. People go, you do this at the library. Yeah. It's a very interesting facility that they have. But I don't have the talent or the tools or the expertise or experience that many of you have here with woodworking and doing some of the phenomenal things that I've seen done on the lathe and with the routers and all that type of thing. When I first retired, I used to run a media production company with my partner for 26 years, and I retired about 8 years ago. And one of the hobbies that I picked up was doing carving caricatures. I attended some classes at WWG and at Brandenburg, and now I work exclusively with one of the top carvers in the state, Neil Nessart. And I've really had a passion for the carving of characters and things. And my initial interest in wood carving and woodworking was probably sparked when I was about 17, 18 years old. It's a long time ago. I worked at an advertising agency, and there was an art director there who did some of the most phenomenal carvings that I've ever seen. Busts of cowboys and caricatures and things like that. I was asking one day, I said, so, I mean, that's an incredible talent. You take this block of wood and you're able to come up with these gorgeous carvings. And he said, how do you do that? How much talent? He said, it's pretty easy. He said, you can just get this block of wood and you chisel or carve away all the excess and the characters inside. I've done this for 6 years and I haven't found that secret out yet. It takes a lot more than that. But also was the one that told me, he said, you know, when a non-woodworker sees a tree that's fell, they go, oh great, I'm gonna get some nice firewood for winter, or nice romantic evening, put a log on the fire and stuff like that. That's a non-woodworker. They said that the woodworker sees a dead tree laying in the field, and all of a sudden it's like the opportunities are there for boards, branches, bowls, jewelry boxes, and all kinds of carving. And doesn't even think of a fireplace. That's not true, because I have done some of those projects that have not turned out that they've gone in the fireplace. So when I started to get more involved with woodworking after I retired, I had to start out with some interesting tools. My dad was quite involved with it, so I had a 105-year-old jigsaw with a grinder on it, about a 65-year-old radial arm saw. My dad, for some reason, collected probably 30 or 40 hand saws, but I still have no idea why I have all of those. And a few other things like that, but I guess you just have to put a little TLC into those things and put in a few spare parts, a little lubricant, and kick the rust off, kind of like myself, and they're running fine. So I started assembling and now working on moving towards getting a lathe. That's part of the thing that kind of caught Tammy's eyes, is the bowls and the shapes that you see that I've done here. This is my lathe. I have an angle grinder, and that's how I make the round bowls. And people look at it and say, well, what's your lathe like? It's plug in and work with this. So, when I attended the first laser engraving class at the McGonigal Library, about 5 years ago. I went in with, I didn't have any idea what was gonna be going on, so I went to this seminar, I was telling Tammy. I sat down and kind of looked around after 10 minutes and there was nobody, I mean, nobody there other than the guy who was ran the laser machine. So for the next 2 hours, I had exclusive teaching and training by this guy. And I was amazed at what capabilities there are with the laser now and how you can create things that are so intricate and so precise with your carvings. And so my goal tonight is to go over some of the things that I've done that maybe you can think about for some of your projects to enhance them, or you may even want to do some of the things at the McGonigal Library. I was talking to Tammy today, the lady who runs it, and it's open. I need a library card, and you can go to the library and use a number of things that they have in this facility, which really kind of surprised me. They have everything from the laser engraving to 3D printers. They have about 3 or 4 of them that are running. They also have the Cricut, wood burning, they have sewing, they have silk screening, weaving, and robotics and things like that, all in this facility, available to you at no charge. You go in, she conducts classes for all of these different things that are posted on the bulletin board, or if you go to the library and get the schedule, they'll have classes that are about Cricut, about the laser engraver, about 3D printing, so, and it's all you need is your library card.
You have to be a resident of.
Yeah, no, you.
Not right now, no. Yeah, and he said, all you need is stop in, fill out a card and make an appointment. I brought along, later on, I'll show you, I brought along a few handouts about Metaspace, they call it Metaspace 5 or Makerspace, that you can pick up and have some contact information, tell you a little bit more about what goes on there. I primarily work with an Epilogue Mini 18 CO2 40-watt laser engraver. Now this sounds cool, doesn't it? But I won't get into the technical aspects of it because it's very hard to explain a lot of the intricacies of it without the machine here. And that's part of the advantage of going to these classes that she teaches. It's about a 2-hour class to certify you on the laser engraver. Once you're certified, then you can make an appointment, and then like I do, or I have been doing for about 4 years, I go in there and she pretty much lets me do my own thing with the laser engraver. It's a $20,000 piece of equipment that allows you to do a lot of different things. Not only do I do carving on wood primarily, but the laser engraver lets you carve on glass and aluminum, rubber stamps, fleece, leather. We've even engraved on pumpkins, it's true, candy bars. And one day she was very excited because she had engraved on a hot dog. I came in and I went, yeah, right. And sure enough, she took this hot dog out and she had the laser engraved on there, where's the beef? So there's, I mean, it's kind of endless what you can engrave on, but there are some restrictions. And in this packet of information I got here about the laser engraver in the classes, they will stipulate things that you cannot engrave on because they let off toxic and noxious fumes that they restricted from so that you don't produce toxic and noxious fumes like PVC or vinyl or carbon fiber. You can't engrave on that, but she showed me a thing the other day where she engraved on a piece of granite. So the laser is pretty powerful. It's just it has its restrictions, but it's limited mostly to what the material is. One of my initial responsibilities when I got more involved with Nancy and the laser engraver was to determine the correct laser speed and intensity of the laser on different kinds of woods. So Pete, you can imagine a laser cutting into a piece of basswood will go, if you had a high power, you'd burn right through it very, very quickly. So there's settings, there's 2 primary settings on the engraver. One is the speed of the laser, which is going back and forth, back and forth. The other is the intensity, and it's like from 0 to 100 on the settings. And you have to be careful because if you use things like spalted wood that have soft spots, there'll be flare-ups and you can cause a fire.
So that's exactly one.
That was one of those projects that did go to the fireplace because I had this beautiful piece of spalted maple that I had carved and didn't realize there was kind of a soft spot or a weak spot in where the laser was gonna carve my illustrated graphic. And I turned my back to pick something up, and when I turned around, there was this flame and smoke. That was produced. I think we'll put that out and we'll just toss that one away. So you have to be careful with that. Yes,
What software is Rensolation?
it's a proprietary one for Epilogue. So it's, I don't know what the name of it is, but it interacts with, they use Corel Draw for a lot of the animation and probably the graphics that we work with. And that's integrated with Epilogue software to give the directions to the speed and adjusting and that type of thing. The tools that I use, and I was talking with Tammy about it, obviously, other than safety glasses and leather gloves, I use a Forstner that I file a tip off of the little point, so I don't have to have this little hole in it as when I'm doing my marking on the wood. I have a drill press, my trusty angle grinder, and I use the chainsaw on occasion. I have an extra one of these. I was telling one of the gentlemen here that I have two of these because there was a friend of mine who came over, saw how handy this was, and said, well, I'm gonna get one of those. And I said, when you use it, really be careful because this thing grabs, and keep both hands on the angle grinder. About 2 weeks later, he stopped over and he said, you're gonna have this right now, and he had his hand up here because he didn't hold it properly, and his wife said, go give it to John, have him cut himself up. So I have two of these in case somebody wants them. So I use that, and then I use the rough King Arthur grinding wheel. That's my preliminary cut with. And then I have the fine one on there now that I switched from after I grind it down a bit. I will then use the fine one, and then I'll do the final polishing with some of these new wave mesh sanding discs. When I go about making a bowl or a project, I figure out what kind of wood I'm gonna make, and then I'll come up with whatever design it's gonna be. It's gonna be round, is it square, or whatever it is. But then, what my initial thing is I had here, and in making this little pickleball paddle, I'll mark a line out here. This is gonna be my final border when I finish. But the inside red one is where I will initially take my cut, and I'll stay on that line, because what I do is once I get this ground down, I'll go back and I'll take the disc and I'll go to the outside edge and I'll take it and I'll go sweeping in like that, put it around it on the inside of the circle. So what I then, now that I've got it marked, then what I do is I go in with the Forstner and I mark spots at a certain depth all around, makes it look like Swiss cheese. And then once I get that done, that's when I take the coarse wheel and I go through and I grind that down close to where you can just about see where the Forstner has made its mark. Then I take the smooth wheel and I'll file that down to make that disappear, so it's almost clear. And then I will take the new wave sanding disc and smooth it down to be finished like that. And then the next step is to go to the library and add your graphic. So, without a lathe, you gotta use my cheap man's lathe, use my trusty angle grinder.
So is that a cheese tray now? It's no longer a pickleball.
No, this, I don't know how many of you heard of the popular charcuterie boards that are out there now. Okay, it has a live edge and we put cheese on it or hummus or fruit or whatever. Well, I play a lot of pickleball, so I came up with a spoofy design for people to have competition for a charcuterie board. If you're an athlete, you can have a pickleball charcuterie board. And it's, the slogan is, it's an ideal way to serve your guests in a sporting fashion. So, that didn't work so well. But I have sold a few of these. People thought it was pretty funny to have something like this. And so this is a competition of charcuterie boards. When I go to engraving now, the next step, I always look, I go online and there's a lot of sources in that pamphlet that I have on where you can look up artwork, different artwork, and I primarily look for like, I'll Google something like line art of eagle in flight. And there's about 10,000 line arts of eagles in flight, different positions on it. Well, I look for primarily black and white instead of anything that's vector with colors and stuff. If you find one that has color, you can go in and switch it to black and white and convert it over to black and white because it works better on the laser with multiple colors. It works, but it gets shadowing and it's in grays instead of producing the colors when you're doing the engraving. So I look for something that's nice and crisp and that has, well, it's maybe 1,000 pixels by 1,000 pixels, so it's big enough that if you're kind of playing with sizes, that it doesn't get real pixelated because then the engraving will get kind of fuzzy. So you want it to be nice and crisp and clear. I use Photoshop at home. I capture the artwork that I want, and then I'll go in and enhance it, or I'll modify it, or whatever I want to do to it. And then when I go to the library, as I mentioned earlier, they have Corel Draw, and then I incorporate my graphic into Corel Draw and further enhance it because the library is more sophisticated. You can really bump up the contrast and you can manipulate the artwork, reposition and change it, transform it more so than in my Photoshop. Once I have the artwork at the library and it's in the Corel Draw, then I go to incorporate that into the engraving engraver software, and that allows me to then go in and lay out the piece that I have, do a line art drawing of the piece I'm going to have, a square, circle, or pickleball, whatever, and then I can position my graphic on that grid that's going to be on the piece of wood or the pickleball. And then I set the printing on the engraver, and that again goes back to the settings that I mentioned earlier, that from 0 to 10 or 0 to 100 is the speed of the laser, and then 0 to 100 for the intensity of the laser. And once you have that set up, then you're ready to do a preliminary, what we call like a blueprint. So what that means is you have your graphic all set up, you're pretty satisfied with what it's going to be, and you think you have it all positioned exactly where you want it, right in the middle. But to make sure, we cover the piece of wood with blue tape. And we then run a laser on a real low power, like 10, real low power, and fast speed, so that it produces like a blueprint or a ghost image on this blue tape. And it does not cut into the wood at all, which is obviously you don't want it until you're ready. But so it doesn't do anything to the wood, but you can see exactly where your graphic is going to be positioned, so you can go back into the software, adjust it, move it around, make it smaller, make it a little bit bigger. But this is your blueprint that if you went right now, just peel this off and ran it, it would be out, it would come out like this. And the one thing to notice here is this is the final engraving of the logo. We put the special white masking on, and I did it on this one for a project that I did today. The primary reason for this white tape is that it eliminates the smoke stain on the wood. Because as the lasers go back and forth, you can see there's a little yellowing like above here, and all that type of thing. If you were to take this off. Don't have your wood get stained. And then the trick is you have to, that's the edge of this. Then you pull this off slowly. Take it off kind of quick. You're taking it off and there was no staining. That's like what we found out when I first started, we would put, do the laser engraving and, we'd have the stain, and when I get home, I have to take a real fine sandpaper and just lightly go over it so I can cut into the laser. So you just to eliminate the stain on it.
Is that just white tape?
Yeah, it's special white masking tape.
You have no residue from that tape on the wood then?
And they have that, they have that all at the library, it's all for. Yeah. So,
How limiting is the size of what you can do with what they have for
good
equipment?
question. The bed of the laser is 18 inches by 12 inches.
But you
So-
can
so
put it
when I
on,
did this, today, I put this on here, this was 16 by 10. And all I wanted to do was just hollow this out, this isn't done yet, I wanted to engrave a bird in flight on that. And so this is close to the match, so it's 10 by 16.
is this epilogue machine set on stuff, or do you have to, what I'm getting at, could you bring something in this big and set this machine and do something smaller on it?
Now, this is something you set your piece of wood on that bed, all 15 by 12 by 18. And that's the limit.
Okay.
It almost looks bigger than what the limit is on the anniversary.
So this one, this is 11 and a half by 11 and 3/4 by 11 and 3/4.
So it's almost to the max.
Yeah, I would have gone a couple inches that way, but yeah, this just fit on the bed. But yeah, that's a good question, because people will often ask about that. So. The next step, that if you want to add a little something extra, is if you want to put, use resin, and I've been very successful with doing that. The trick is, and this isn't a real fair example, but it's principle. I didn't have something at home that I wanted to bring, but you make 2 or 3 passes with the laser of the artwork, and by that I mean you run your laser at the speed it's supposed to be, and you just hit repeat and repeat and repeat, and it will go back over the image, and it digs it deeper and deeper and deeper into the wood. So you want to get it down deep enough that when you pour your resin, that it just doesn't spill all over. You want to have a good channel that the resin would sit in. And I found that when I do laser like that, or the engraving on that is once the image is engraved in it, you need to go back with like a denture brush or a brass brush of some kind and scrape out the area where you had your engraving, because the laser is burning into the wood and there's ash residue in there. So if you don't clean that out and you pour your resin, you're gonna have all these little black specks of ash in your resin, which another one that was a fireplace. I have a very lucrative fireplace myself. But that's it, and especially when it shows up, like in this, probably it isn't as traumatic as if you want to do something like this, and this is a different way of treating it, where you put your resin, but then when you change your colors.
Laser burned all the way through?
No, I did. But for doing the resin with the see-through thing, what I need to do on it is, first of all, I take the backside of my bowl, and I do make laser engraving. I try to get the laser depending on the wood again, to get down about a quarter, eighth of an inch maybe. I don't need to go much further than that. I did a little piece of wood here, but, and you can take a look at it later, but that's about as deep as I went with the resin, and you can still get a really, you know, nice, clear image. But what I do is the backside, I get it engraved, I pour the laser, and as the laser is setting, if you haven't, I'm sure you have plenty of you work with resin, it'll bubble while it's settling. Well, what I do to take care of that is I have a little torch, and I just gently go over it, and it'll pop all the bubbles, and just do it a couple of times. And then I go back to the bowl later on and see if it's settled a little bit, and I top it off. So once it's dry, then this again is the back side. I'll get this nice and smooth, sand it off. And then I'll flip the bowl over, and I'll go about the same thing that I did with the paddle, where I know that the depth, I have it marked ahead of time that I need to have my force to go down, whatever the depth is, maybe a half inch or whatever the depth is I have in the bowl. And Mike makes marks like that, and I grind it with the coarse grinder, with the smooth grinder. And when I start to see the resin, when I just start to see it with the sanding of the smooth grinding wheel, that's when I switch to the new wave sandpaper, and then I sand it down until you can see all of the epoxy, and then I finish it off. When you have your
How are you holding this down like you want?
I have one of those little workbench tables that got the grips on the side. And I anchor it down, especially when I'm using the angle rack, I make sure that thing is really anchored, because I don't want the piece flying away. It's not good. Would be another piece for a firewood.
How long does it take to grind something down? For a long time?
I was waiting for somebody to ask. Depends on what you're grinding. If you wanted a bowl that looked like this, I could probably get this ground down in about 7 minutes. Get it ground down like this, and then I'll go to the library and I'll put the edges on, and then engrave it, I'll finish it. But I've gotten to the point where I've been very careful with it and done it enough times that my wife's even a little surprised. I'm gonna go out and make a bowl. I'll be back in about a half hour, and I'll find my wood and I'll go out there and I make my initial pass on that red line and just very carefully set the edge of the grinding wheel in there and get it ground down, and then do the little routine and get it smooth off and shape probably, like I say, 10 minutes. Doesn't take long. Yep.
You said that when you're lasering deeper and deeper and deeper, you brush the carbon out. Next time, do you double sticky that tape to the laser so that it doesn't move? Because if you have something very intricate and it's round, how do you keep it exactly in that spot? Or are you double sticking?
Yeah, well, you could do that. The bed of the laser is a honeycomb, and it's got a raised edge all around the 8x12. It's just a little bit of a raised edge, like an eighth of an inch. So when you put it on the bed, you butt it up against the top and the side, and it won't move because the laser does not touch the wood at all.
Okay, but now you have something round.
Right.
Okay, now how are you gonna keep that stable, brushing that out without moving it just a little?
Oh, yeah.
Brushes it out when it's done.
Yeah, you brush it out when it's done.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
the laser, yeah.
so you don't do it between each pass?
No, I just like on, like this one of the field of the deer. I think I did that, I ran that about 3 times to get it nice and deep, but I wanted it dark. And then when I was done, I brushed it all out, it took it. What really works good is like the denture brush, because it's got a wide end and a back end, and you can get into little cracks. It's amazing how much that ash you can scrape out. Plus, I have a nice big air compressor. When I'm all done brushing it, then I take it out of the garage and blast it with the air compressor, and it cleans it all out. Especially if you're gonna do one like this, because when you have a nice clear spot of resin, you don't want to have flicks of black ashes and stuff like that. It's just, it kind of takes away from the neat beauty of it. I did one like this where a little girl that's retarded and she loves puzzles, so I made one like this the other day with orange in it, that's her favorite. And I had a flick of ash in here. I kept grinding it, and I knew I had about 1/8 of an inch of epoxy. And I kept grinding on it, and grinding it, just don't want to get it hot enough and melt and fall through. And I got to the spot where that little flick of ash goes, and that's it, fine, we're perfect. But it's a lot better to clean it all out, try to have it as little of that ash as possible, so.
That grinder, is that an Arbor Tech head on it?
Oh, this is our,
No, just the grinding head.
oh, the right hand, that's a King Arthur.
Okay.
Yeah, I just got 2 wheels, I know there's an assortment of wheels, I've got the very coarse one, this one, which is very, very aggressive. And then the fine one, but I think there's a set of 6, they're all different colors. And I just need one thing I will tell you that, I had a piece of black walnut and I was kind of in a hurry to get a bolt on it, and I used the aggressive wheel on it. And I was kind of bearing down on it and my angle grinder started to smoke. I burned it up. So I guess I gotta be a little more patient while I'm doing my grinding. But
What do you do for dust control when you're doing that grinding?
I'm sitting outside in the garage.
Ah,
That's been my dust collector. I'm bringing it every garage floor. One of the other things that the laser lets you do, and it's in conjunction with doing the engraving of the images, you can actually cut through wood with the laser. It's that strong. It's strong enough to go through. It's limited to like 1/4 inch thick of Baltic birch. Like this. It will cut through this. It won't cut through anything much thicker. Nancy, the lady who runs, but she does all these designs and things like this on with the Baltic birch. And what I did one day, because I just want to try something, is I found the flower that I wanted to do. So I did a laser. I lasered the artwork, one piece of wood, and I went in and cut it out with the bands off. Then I went back and I programmed the laser that once it gets done doing the artwork, it'll go back and and part of it is just the way you set up the engraving. That's a software thing that you learn at this class. And I went in and I put a special outline just around these 3 components that I wanted cut out, so that I could then put them on here and make it a 3-dimensional flower. So it will cut through the 1/4 inch Baltic bass. Yes.
Question, so if you're cutting through a piece of wood, do you have to leave little tabs or screws on there so the piece just doesn't drop?
No, as a matter of fact, if I'm lucky. How about steps?
What do you put underneath it at, so as it goes through, it doesn't burn the bed?
That's the alternate bed that they have. There's a honeycomb bed that I mentioned, and there's a bed that take the honeycomb one out of the engraver, the engraver, and you put this solid one in for when you're doing burning.
Okay.
So when you just pop that one out, so you're not cutting completely through, you cut right to the bottom edge, just leave a thin film of wood or whatever that you just snap out of the end.
Yeah, it cuts it so thin. Sometimes depending on the wood, you have to make a second pass. But it'll cut through, and sometimes while it's going through, the piece will just drop out, cuts it that close. And other times, just depending on the one, sometimes you get this Baltic bass wood from Menards, and you get it from Home Depot, and there's like a different grade, I guess. Some of them I've seen it where they're cutting out Santas and ornaments and things like that. And the pieces fall through. So, I've kind of gone through the things that I wanted to share with you about the laser engraving. I'd like to entertain some of the questions now that you have.
How fast will it cut? How many inches a minute? What do you normally run it at?
Well, it depends on the wood. I mean, like, for this one, just to give you an idea, I had this was cherry wood, and I had it set at 95 power, which is almost full power. And I had it at the speed of 45, which is going back, and this is, I've got things on my phone that I could show you, but the laser's going back and forth at whatever speed it is. Obviously, you go to 100, it's going like that, it's going that fast. I'm at like 45, like 50 speed. And to engrave this took about 25 minutes, because this was so big.
You can keep on engraving the paper if you want.
Yeah, but the thing is, if you're gonna do multiple burns, engravings with it, never touch this between burns, because once you move it, I don't care how good you'll never get it back exact, because
It doesn't matter, that's just there until you're done.
right, no,
So you
you'll just keep going over it and over it and over it and over it, and if you move it, it
over.
goes back to the fire. You should see the size of my fire pit, it's like 10 by 10. Yeah, it's
So
so.
I don't have to make it super fast. If I don't touch it, it's gonna be.
Oh, yeah, that's like when you're doing something like this, and I wanna get deeper and slow the resin, then I'll go in and let it burn like 2 or 3 times to get nice and deep.
Old press. Old press.
You move red light, it's just going in here, right in here is gonna be gold this, and then this is gonna be gold. See? I'm the same way.
Yes.
Johnny, do you want to take a break?
Bring that in, I'll answer some more questions.
Yeah.
Okay.
Why don't we do that? We'll take a break for a while.
So Ron,
Laser. What big my fire pit is, or anything?
How did you do the color on the rose?
Just acrylic,
You just painted it.
acrylic, yeah, I just like, did the engraving, and I decided I'd add some color to it.
And show some birds.
Oh, yeah, that was the other thing, when I was talking with Tammy, you guys do your toys and things like that, and I know Ron was talking about his birds, because I saw him up at the Stevens Point Carver show, and I had done several of these, and these are called comfort birds. Ron's are much more sophisticated. His has eyes and mouths and stuff. Mine are just round off from little shapes like that. And I usually get a drum or whatever just to smooth them out. But you give them to kids or somebody who's kind of down and out, and it's just the feel of it. It's like, I'm sure you've heard of like a worry stone. Give it the worry stone, somebody just holds it, it's smooth, it just feels good. That's what these are. You shape them and you smooth them down and you coat them with a few coats of polyurethane or something like that, and they're like glass. And give them to somebody like a little kid in the hospital or at the McDonald's house, they just kind of crush it. Just makes them feel good. So it's something I've done with some of the people and done with the carbon that I think might be interesting.
Other question, Chris. So when you're laser touching, you're creating smoke and so on, how are you mitigating, how are you taking care of that? smoke?
The laser equipped with an extractor. And so as the laser's going back and forth and the smoke is being generated, it gets pulled through the back, these huge filters, it goes through and then out. And if you don't turn the extractor on, the room fills with smoke. Did that too. That's part of the issue. They're all part of it.
On your golf balls there.
Yeah.
Iris laser, a special shape or something on there that I guarantee, yeah, you get a perfect thing.
No, those were with laser, I cut those off with a Dremel saw, and then the core inside is what you cut.
I have one more question. So if you're doing a flat surface, this obviously works, but what if it's a curve in a bowl or a stepped up or down? You do
If it's a curved bowl, I learned that, just the other day, there was a special setting on the engraver that, like, for example, if you wanted to, well, this was one that we did today. We had a depth. I didn't realize until I had set the laser to read at this level, because the laser head it's going back and forth at this upper level. Well, when you have an image down inside, the laser's got that space and the image isn't real sharp until you learn from the manual that there's a setting that you go, that you center it in the middle of the bowl, and there's a setting that keeps the laser within this restricted area, and then you get a real crisp image.
What if you're gonna do it on the side though?
On a side, I don't think they can do that. I know, like when you do bevels or glasses that are shaped like this.
I actually had a guy do one for me, a friend of mine, and he used to belong to the guild, and he did it on a curved surface, and it worked out fairly well.
Like the
But
glass,
we played with it a couple times.
yeah, like a cocktail glass.
You know, it was actually black walnut.
Like, well,
Yeah.
but I've done glasses, like cocktail glasses, that some of them that are straight up and down, those are easy, they just sit nice and level, but the ones that are kind of curved like that, you have to compensate. When you put it in the carriage to hold it, then you have to, if you're gonna have some artwork, you have to play with the artwork so that it doesn't get stretched or
Or make a hole in glass, you make a hole in glass.
no.
How is the glass done?
There's some, that's just,
Yeah.
that's
Is
just,
it anything different?
nope, it's just a flat surface, and I flipped it over and did the engraving on this side, so that people use this, and they would candy or.
So when you do the glass, when you do glass, you don't get the charm effect then, huh?
No, what it does, the laser actually fractures the glass. All this is, if you feel this on the backside, it's sharp, it's rough. I mean, I won't cut myself, but when you do laser engraving on glass, the very first thing that you have to do is you go over by the sink and you use Dove dishwasher soap and a brush, because the particles of glass are so fine, like baby powder, and you can get it in the pores of your skin. So you don't touch it. And as soon as this is done, go to the sink and brush it with the.
And once you do that, then you're fine.
Yeah, you can feel the back of this. It's still, you can feel those rough edges, but it's not gonna touch them. There's no particles of glass in here. A lot of patience. Well, all you do is just get a block and then just chip the stuff away that's inside. Just a pattern that picked up frontal view and side view and then.
Or you get a rosin 3D printer. and you do that.
You can do that too. That's cheating.
I know, that's for the rosin printers.
And they're like, oh,
So on the candy dish, the image is backwards, how do you push the image over?
I'm pretty good at your software. You can flip it, yeah, you just flip it over. Yeah, like, instead of printing it this way, just flip it on, there's a command in the software, it'll take your image and just flip it, and then you do the backside. So people, they do serve food or whatever, it doesn't get caught in there. Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, if nobody has any other questions, then we will adjourn. Thank you very much.